Chapter 3, Letters 1861-62, On the Frontier, Mining Adventures, Journalistic. Beginnings by Mark Twain. Clemens went from the battlefront to Keokuk, where Orion was preparing to accept the appointment prophesied by Madame Capril. Orion was a staunch Unionist, and a member of Lincoln's cabinet had offered him the secretaryship of the new territory of Nevada. Orion had accepted, and only needed funds to carry him to his destination. His pilot brother had the funds, and upon being appointed private secretary, agreed to pay both passages on the overland stage, which would bear them across the Great Plains from St. Joe to Carson City. Mark Twain, in Roughing It, has described that glorious journey and the frontier life that followed it. His letters form a supplement of realism to a tale that is more or less fictitious, though marvelously true in color and background. The first bears no date, but it was written not long after their arrival, August 14, 1861. It is not complete, but there is enough of it to give us a very fair picture of Carson City, a wooden town, its population 2,000 souls. Part of a letter to Mrs. Jane Clemens, in St. Louis. Date not given but Sept or Oct, 1861. My dear mother, I hope you will all come out here someday, but I shan't consent to invite you until we can receive you in style. But I guess we shall be able to do that, one of these days. I intend that Pamela shall live on Lake Bigler until she can knock a bull down with her fist, say, about 3 months. Tell everything as it is, no better and no worse. Well, Gold Hill sells at $5,000 per foot, cash down. Wildcat isn't worth 10 cents. The country is fabulously rich in gold, silver, copper, lead, coal, iron, quicksilver, marble, granite, chalk, plaster of Paris. Gypsum, thieves, murderers, desperadoes, ladies, children, lawyers, Christians, Indians, Chinamen, Spaniards, gamblers, sharpers, coyotes pronounced coyotes, poets, preachers, and jackass. Rabbits, I overheard a gentleman say, the other day, that it was the D-dest country under the sun. And that comprehensive conception I fully subscribe to. It never rains here and the dew never falls. No flowers grow here, and no green thing gladdens the eye. The birds that fly over the land carry their provisions with them. Only the crow and the raven tarry with us. Our city lies in the midst of a desert of the purest, most unadulterated, and compromising sand, in which infernal soil nothing but that fag end of vegetable creation, sagebrush, ventures to grow. If you will take a Lilliputian cedar tree for a model, and build a dozen imitations of it with the stiffest article of telegraph wire, set them 1 foot apart and then try to walk through them, you'll understand, provided the floor is cover inches deep with sand, what it is to wander through a sagebrush desert. When crushed, sagebrush emits an odor which isn't exactly magnolia and equally isn't exactly polecat, but is a sort of compromise between the two. It looks a good deal like greasewood, and is the ugliest plant that was ever conceived of. It is gray in color. On the plains, sagebrush and greasewood grow about twice as large as the common geranium, and in my opinion, they are a very good substitute for that useless vegetable. Greasewood is a perfect, most perfect imitation in miniature of a live oak tree barring the color of it. As to the other fruits and flowers of the country, there ain't any except pulu or chilur, or whatever they call it, a species of unpoetical willow that grows on the banks of the Carson. A river, 20 yards wide, knee-deep, and so villainously rapid and crooked that it looks like it had wandered into the country without intending it, and had run about in a bewildered way and got lost, in its hurry to get out again before some thirsty man came along and drank it up. I said we are situated in a flat, sandy desert, true, and surrounded on all sides by such prodigious mountains, that when you gaze at them a while, and begin to conceive of their grandeur, and next to feel their vastness expanding your soul, and ultimately find yourself growing and swelling and spreading into a giant. I say, when this point is reached, you look disdainfully down upon the insignificant village of Carson, and in that instant you are seized with a burning desire to stretch forth your hand, put the city in your pocket, and walk off with it. As to churches, I believe they have got a Catholic one here, but like that one the New York fireman spoke of, I believe they don't run her now. Now, although we are surrounded by sand, the greatest part of the town is built upon what was once a very pretty grassy spot, and the streams of pure water that used to poke about it in rural sloth and solitude now pass through on dusty streets and gladden the hearts of men by reminding them that there is at least something here that hath its prototype among the homes they left behind them. And up King's Canyon, please pronounce canyon after the manner of the natives, There are ranches or farms where they say hay grows and grass and beets and onions and turnips and other truck which is suitable for cows. Yes, and even Irish potatoes. Also cabbage, peas, and beans. The houses are mostly frame, unplastered, but papered inside with flour sacks sewed together, and the handsomer the brand upon the sacks is, the neater the house looks. Occasionally, you stumble on a stone house. On account of the dryness of the country, the shingles on the houses warp till they look like short joints of stove pipe split lengthwise. Remainder missing. In this letter is something of the wild freedom of the West, which later would contribute to his fame. The spirit of the frontier, of Mark Twain, was beginning to stir him. There had been no secretary work for him to do, and no provision for payment. He found his profit in studying human nature and in prospecting native resources. He was not interested in mining, not yet. With a boy named John Kinney, he made an excursion to Lake Bigler, now Tahoe, and located a timber claim, really of great value. They were supposed to build a fence around it, but they were too full of the enjoyment of camp life to complete it. They put in most of their time wandering through the stately forest or drifting over the transparent lake in a boat left there by lumbermen. They built themselves a brush house, but they did not sleep in it. In Roughing It, he writes, "It never occurred to us, for one thing, and besides, it was built to hold the ground, and that was enough. We did not wish to strain it." They were having a glorious time when their campfire got away from them and burned up their claim. His next letter, of which the beginning is missing, describes the fire. Fragment of a letter to Mrs. Jane Clemens and Mrs. Moffat, in St. Louis. The level ranks of flame were relieved at intervals by the standard-bearers, as we called the tall dead trees, wrapped in fire, and waving their blazing banners 100 feet in the air. Then we could turn from the scene to the lake and see every branch and leaf and cataract of flame upon its bank perfectly reflected as in a gleaming, fiery mirror. The mighty roaring of the conflagration, together with our solitary and somewhat unsafe position, for there was no one within 6 miles of us, rendered the scene very impressive. Occasionally, one of us would remove his pipe from his mouth and say, "Superb, magnificent, beautiful. But by the Lord God Almighty, if we attempt to sleep in this little patch tonight, we'll never live till morning. For if we don't burn up, we'll certainly suffocate." But he was persuaded to sit up until we felt pretty safe as far as the fire was concerned, and then we turned in with many misgivings. When we got up in the morning, we found that the fire had burned small pieces of driftwood within 6 feet of our boat and had made its way to within 4 or 5 steps of us on the south side. We looked like lava men, covered as we were with ashes and begrimed with smoke. We were very black in the face, but we soon washed ourselves white again. John D. Kinney, a Cincinnati boy and a first-rate fellow, too, who came out with Judge Turner, was my comrade. We stayed at the lake 4 days. I had plenty of fun, for John constantly reminded me of Sam Bowen when we were on our campaign in Missouri. But first and foremost, for Annie's, Molly's, and Pamela's comfort, be it known that I have never been guilty of profane language since I have been in this territory, and Kinney hardly ever swears. But sometimes human nature gets the better of him. On the second day, we started to go by land to the lower camp, a distance of 3 miles, over the mountains, each carrying an axe. I don't think we got lost exactly, but we wandered 4 hours over the steepest, rockiest, and most dangerous piece of country in the world. I couldn't keep from laughing at Kinney's distress, so I kept behind so that he could not see me. After he would get over a dangerous place, with infinite labor and constant apprehension, he would stop, lean on his axe, and look around, then behind, then ahead, and then drop his head and ruminate a while. Then he would draw a long sigh and say, "Well, could any billygoat have scaled that place without breaking his neck?" And I would reply, "No, I don't think he could." "No, you don't think he could," mimicking me. "Why don't you curse the infernal place? You know you want to." "I do, and will curse the thieving country as long as I live." Then we would toil on in silence for a while. Finally, I told him, "Well, John, what if we don't find our way out of this today? We'll know all about the country when we do get out." "Oh, stuff, I know enough and too much about the D villainous locality already." Finally, we reached the camp. But as we brought no provisions with us, the first subject that presented itself to us was how to get back. John swore he wouldn't walk back, so we rolled a drift log apiece into the lake and set about making paddles, intending to straddle the logs and paddle ourselves back home sometime or other. But the lake objected, got stormy, and we had to give it up. So we set out for the only house on this side of the lake, 3 miles from there down the shore. We found the way without any trouble, reached there before sundown, played 3 games of cribbage, borrowed a dugout, and pulled back 6 miles to the upper camp. As we had eaten nothing since sunrise, we did not waste time in cooking our supper or in eating it either. After supper, we got out our pipes, built a rousing campfire in the open air, established a faro bank, an institution of this country, on our huge flat granite dining table, and bet white beans till 1 o'clock when John went to bed. We were up before the sun the next morning, went out on the lake and caught a fine trout for breakfast. But unfortunately, I spoilt part of the breakfast. We had coffee and tea boiling on the fire, in coffee pots, and fearing they might not be strong enough, I added more ground coffee and more tea, but mistakes will happen. I put the tea in the coffee pot and the coffee in the teapot, and if you imagine that they were not villainous mixtures, just try the effect once. And so Bella is to be married on the 1st of Oct. Well, I send her and her husband my very best wishes, and I may not be here, but wherever I am on that night, we'll have a rousing campfire and a jollification in honor of the event. In a day or two, we shall probably go to the lake and build another cabin and fence, and get everything into satisfactory trim before our trip to Esmeralda, about the 1st of November. What has become of Sam Bowen? I would give my last shirt to have him out here. I will make no promises, but I believe if John would give him $1,000 and send him out here, he would not regret it. He might possibly do very well here, but he could do little without capital. Remember me to all my St. Louis and Keokuk friends, and tell Charlie and Hallie Renson that I heard a military band play. What are the wild waves saying? The other night, and it reminded me very forcibly of them. It brought Ella Creel and Belle across the desert too in an instant, for they sang the song in Orion's yard the first time I ever heard it. It was like meeting an old friend. I tell you, I could have swallowed that whole band, trombone and all, if such a compliment would have been any gratification to them. Love to the young folks. Sam. The reference in the foregoing letter to Esmeralda has to do with mining plans. He was beginning to be mildly interested, and, with his brother Orion, had acquired feet. In an Esmeralda camp, probably at a very small price, so small as to hold out no exciting prospect of riches. In his next letter, he gives us the size of this claim, which he has visited. His interest, however, still appears to be chiefly in his timber claim on Lake Bigler, Tahoe, though we are never to hear of it again after this letter. To Mrs. Moffett in St. Louis. Carson City, Oct. 25, 1861. My dear sister, I have just finished reading your letter and Ma's of Sept. 8th. How in the world could they have been so long coming? You ask me if I have forgot my promise to lay a claim for Mr. Moffett. By no means. I have already laid a timber claim on the borders of a Lake Bigler, which throws Camo in the shade, and if we succeed in getting one Mr. Jones to move his sawmill up there, Mr. Moffett can just consider that claim better than bank stock. Jones says he will move his mill up next spring. In that claim I took up about 2 miles in length by 1 in width, and the names in it are as follows: Sam 50 Clemens, W.M., A. Moffett, those, Nye, and 3 others. It is situated on Sam Clemens Bay, so named by Capt. Nye, and it goes by that name among the inhabitants of that region. I had better stop about the lake, though, for whenever I think of it I want to go there and die. The place is so beautiful. I'll build a country seat there one of these days that will make the devil's mouth water if he ever visits the earth. Jim Lampton will never know whether I laid a claim there for him or not until he comes here himself. We have now got about 1650 feet of mining ground, and if it proves good, Mr. Moffett's name will go in. If not, I can get feet for him in the spring, which will be good. You see, Pamela, the trouble does not consist in getting mining ground, for that is plenty enough. But the money to work it with after you get it is the mischief. When I was in Esmeralda, a young fellow gave me 50 feet in the Black Warrior, an unprospected claim. The other day he wrote me that he had gone down 8 feet on the ledge, and found it 8 feet thick, and pretty good rock, too. He said he could take out rock now if there were a mill to crush it. But the mills are all engaged, there are only 4 of them, so, if I were willing, he would suspend work until spring. I wrote him to let it alone at present, because, you see, in the spring I can go down myself and help him look after it. There will then be 20 mills there. Orion and I have confidence enough in this country to think that if the war will let us alone, we can make Mr. Moffett rich without its ever costing him a cent of money or particle of trouble. We shall lay plenty of claims for him, but if they never pay him anything, they will never cost him anything. Orion and I are not financiers. Therefore, you must persuade Uncle Jim to come out here and help us in that line. I have written to him twice to come. I wrote him today. In both letters, I told him not to let you or Ma know that we dealt in such romantic nonsense as brilliant prospects, because I always did hate for anyone to know what my plans or hopes or prospects were, for, if I kept people in ignorance in these matters, No one could be disappointed but myself if they were not realized. You know, I never told you that I went on the river under a promise to pay Bixby $500 until I had paid the money and cleared my skirts of the possibility of having my judgment criticized. I would not say anything about our prospects now if we were nearer home. But I suppose at this distance you are more anxious than you would be if you saw us every month, and therefore it is hardly fair to keep you in the dark. However, keep these matters to yourselves, and then if we fail, we'll keep the laugh in the family. What we want now is something that will commence paying immediately. We have got a chance to get into a claim where they say a tunnel has been run 150 feet and the ledge struck. I got a horse yesterday and went out with the attorney general and the claim owner, and we tried to go to the claim by a new route and got lost in the mountains. Sunset overtook us before we found the claim. My horse got too lame to carry me, and I got down and drove him ahead of me till within 4 miles of town. Then we sent Rice on ahead. Bunker, whose horse was in good condition, undertook to lead mine, and I followed after him. Darkness shut him out from my view in less than a minute, and within the next minute I lost the road and got to wandering in the sagebrush. I would find the road occasionally, and then lose it again in a minute or so. I got to Carson about 9 o'clock at night, but not by the road I traveled when I left it. The general says my horse did very well for a while, but soon refused to lead. Then he dismounted, and had a jolly time driving both horses ahead of him and chasing them here and there through the sage-brush. It does my soul good when I think of it, until he got to town, when both animals deserted him, and he cursed them handsomely and came home alone. Of course, the horses went to their stables. Tell Sammy I will lay a claim for him, and he must come out and attend to it. He must get rid of that propensity for tumbling down, though, for when we get fairly started here, I don't think we shall have time to pick up those who fall. That is Stodder's house, I expect, that Cousin Jim has moved into. This is just the country for Cousin Jim to live in. I don't believe it would take him 6 months to make $100,000 here, if he $0 to commence with. I suppose he can't leave his family, though. Tell Mrs. Benson I never intend to be a lawyer. I have been a slave several times in my life, but I'll never be one again. I always intend to be so situated, unless I marry, that I can pull up stakes and clear out whenever I feel like it. We are very thankful to you, Pamela, for the papers you send. We have received half a dozen or more, and next to letters, they are the most welcome visitors we have. Write oftener, Pamela. Brother Sam. The Cousin Jim, mentioned in this letter, is the original of the character of Colonel Sellers. Whatever Mark Twain's later opinion of Cousin Jim Lambton's financial genius may have been, he seems to have respected it at this time. More than 3 months pass until we have another letter, and in that time the mining fever had become well seated. Mark Twain himself was full of the Sellers' optimism, and it was bound to overflow, fortify as he would against it. He met with little enough encouragement. With 3 companions, in midwinter, he made a mining excursion to the much exploited Humboldt region, returning empty-handed after a month or two of hard experience. This is the trip picturesquely described in chapters Roman 27 to Roman 33 of Roughing It. It is set down historically in Mark Twain, a biography. Harper and Brothers. He mentions the Humboldt in his next letter but does not confess his failure. To Mrs. Jane Clemens and Mrs. Moffat in St. Louis. Carson City, Feb. 8, 1862. My dear mother and sister, by George Pamela, I begin to fear that I have invoked a spirit of some kind or other which I will find some difficulty in laying. I wasn't much terrified by your growing inclinations, but when you begin to call presentiments to your aid, I confess that I weaken. Mr. Moffat is right, as I said before, and I am not much afraid of his going wrong. Men are easily dealt with, but when you get the women started, you are in for it, you know. But I have decided on 2 things, viz., any of you or all of you may live in California, for that is the Garden of Eden reproduced, but you shall never live in Nevada. And secondly, none of you save Mr. Moffat shall ever cross the plains. If you were only going to Pike's Peak, a little matter of 700 miles from St. Joe, you might take the coach and I wouldn't say a word. But I consider it over 2,000 miles from St. Joe to Carson, and the first 600 or 800 miles is mere 4th of July, compared to the balance of the route. But Lord bless you, a man enjoys every foot of it. If you ever come here or to California, it must be by sea. Mr. Moffat must come by overland coach, though, by all means. He would consider it the jolliest little trip he ever took in his life. Either June, July, or August are the proper months to make the journey in. He could not suffer from heat, and 3 or 4 heavy army blankets would make the cold nights comfortable. If the coach were full of passengers, 2 good blankets would probably be sufficient. If he comes and brings plenty of money and fails to invest it to his entire satisfaction, I will prophesy no more. But I will tell you a few things which you wouldn't have found out if I hadn't got myself into this scrape. I expect to return to St. Louis in July, per steamer. I don't say that I will return then, or that I shall be able to do it, but I expect to, you bet. I came down here from Humboldt, in order to look after our Esmeralda interests, and my sore-backed horse and the bad roads have prevented me from making the journey. Yesterday, one of my old Esmeralda friends, Bob Howland, arrived here, and I have had a talk with him. He owns with me in the Horatio and Darby ledge. He says our tunnel is in 52 feet, and a small stream of water has been struck, which bids fair to become a big thing by the time the ledge is reached, sufficient to supply a mill. Now, if you knew anything of the value of water here, you would perceive, at a glance, that if the water should amount to 50 or 100 inches, we wouldn't care whether school kept or not. If the ledge should prove to be worthless, we'd sell the water for money enough to give us quite a lift. But you see, the ledge will not prove to be worthless. We have located nearby a fine site for a mill, and when we strike the ledge, we'll have a mill site, water power, and pay rock all handy. Then we shan't care whether we have capital or not. Mill folks will build us a mill and wait for their pay. If nothing goes wrong, we'll strike the ledge in June, and if we do, I'll be home in July. Pamela, don't you know that undemonstrated human calculations won't do to bet on? Don't you know that I have only talked, as yet, but proved nothing? Don't you know that I have expended money in this country, but have made none myself? Don't you know that I have never held in my hands a gold or silver bar that belonged to me? Don't you know that it's all talk and no cider so far? Don't you know that people who always feel jolly, no matter where they are or what happens to them, who have the organ of hope preposterously developed, who are endowed with an uncongealable sanguine temperament, who never feel concerned about the price of corn, and who cannot, by any possibility, discover any but the bright side of a picture, are very apt to go to extremes and exaggerate with 40-horse microscopic power. Of course, I never tried to raise these suspicions in your mind, but then your knowledge of the fact that some people's poor frail human nature is a sort of crazy institution anyhow, ought to have suggested them to you. Now, if I hadn't thoughtlessly got you into the notion of coming out here, and thereby got myself into a scrape, I wouldn't have given you that highly colored paragraph about the mill, etc. Because, if that pretty little picture should fail and wash out and go the devil generally, it wouldn't cost me the loss of an hour's sleep. But you fellows would be so much distressed on my account as I could possibly be if circumstances beyond my control were to prevent my being present at my own funeral. But, in the bright lexicon of youth, there's no such word as fail. And I'll prove it. And look here, I came near forgetting it. Don't you say a word to me about trains across the plains, because I am down on that arrangement. That sort of thing is played out, The overland coach or the mail steamer is the thing. You want to know something about the route between California and Nevada territory? Suppose you take my word for it, that it is exceedingly jolly. Or take, for a winter view, J. Ross Brown's picture, in Harper's Monthly, of pack mules tumbling 1,500 feet down the side of a mountain. Why, bless you, there's scenery on that route. You can stand on some of those noble peaks and see Jerusalem and the Holy Land. And you can start a boulder and send it tearing up the earth and crashing over trees down to the very devil, madam. And you would probably stand up there and look, and stare and wonder at the magnificence spread out before you till you starve to death, if let alone. But you should take someone along to keep you moving. Since you want to know, I will inform you that an 8-stamp water mill, put up and ready for business, would cost about $10,000 to $12,000. Then, the water to run it with would cost from $1,000 to $30,000, and even more according to the location. What I mean by that is that water powers in this vicinity are immensely valuable. So also in Esmeralda. But Humboldt is a new country, and things don't cost so much there yet. I saw a good water power sold there for $750. But here is the way the thing is managed. A man with a good water power on Carson River will lean his axe up against a tree, provided you find him chopping cordwood at $4 a day, and taking his chalk pipe out of his mouth to afford him an opportunity to answer your questions, will look you coolly in the face and tell you his little property is worth $40,000 or $50,000. But you can easily fix him. You tell him that you'll build a quartz mill on his property, and make him a fourth or a third, or half owner in said mill, in consideration of the privilege of using said property, and that will bring him to his milk in a jiffy. So he spits on his hands and goes in again with his axe until the mill is finished, when lo, out pops the quondam wood chopper, arrayed in purple and fine linen, and prepared to deal in bank stock or bet on the races or take government loans, with an air as to the amount of the most don't care AD. Dest unconcerned that you can conceive of. By George, if I just had $1,000, I'd be all right. Now there's the Horatio, for instance. There are 5 or 6 shareholders in it, and I know I could buy half of their interests at, say, $20 per foot. Now that flour is worth $50 per barrel and they are pressed for money. But I am hard up myself and can't buy, and in June they'll strike the ledge and then, goodbye canary. I can't get it for love or money. $20 a foot, think of it, for ground that is proven to be rich. $20, madam, and we wouldn't part with a foot of our 75 for 5 times the sum. So it will be in Humboldt next summer. The boys will get pushed and sell ground for a song that is worth a fortune. But I am at the helm now. I have convinced Orion that he hasn't business talent enough to carry on a peanut stand, and he has solemnly promised me that he will meddle no more with mining or other matters not connected with the secretary's office. So, you see, if mines are to be bought or sold or tunnels run or shafts sunk, parties have to come to me and me only. I'm the firm, you know. How long does it take one of those infernal trains to go through? Well, anywhere between 3 and 5 months. Tell Margaret that if you ever come to live in California, that you can promise her a home for 100 years and a bully one, but she wouldn't like the country. Some people are malicious enough to think that if the devil were set at liberty and told to confine himself to Nevada territory, that he would come here and look sadly around a while and then get homesick and go back to hell again. But I hardly believe it, you know. I am saying, mind you, that Margaret wouldn't like the country, perhaps, nor the devil either, for that matter, or any other man, but I like it. When it rains here, it never lets up till it has done all the raining it has got to do, and after that, there's a dry spell, you bet. Why, I have had my whiskers and mustaches so full of alkali dust that you'd have thought I worked in a starch factory and boarded in a flour barrel. Since we have been here, there has not been a fire, although the houses are built of wood. They holler fire sometimes, though, but I am always too late to see the smoke before the fire is out, if they ever have any. Now they raised a yell here in front of the office a moment ago. I put away my papers and locked up everything of value, and changed my boots and pulled off my coat, and went and got a bucket of water, and came back to see what the matter was, remarking to myself, I guess I'll be on hand this time, anyway. But I met a friend on the pavement, and he said, Where you been? Fire's out half an hour ago. Ma says Axtell was above suspicion, but I have searched through Webster's Unabridged and can't find the word. However, it's of no consequence. I hope he got down safely. I knew Axtell and his wife as well as I know Dan Haynes. Mrs. A. once tried to embarrass me in the presence of company by asking me to name her baby when she was well aware that I didn't know the sex of that phenomenon. But I told her to call it Francis and spell it to suit herself. That was about 9 years ago, and Axtell had no property and could hardly support his family by his earnings. He was a pious cuss, though, member of Margaret Sexton's church. And Ma says, it looks like a man can't hold public office and be honest. Why, certainly not, madam. A man can't hold public office and be honest. Lord bless you, it is a common practice with Orion to go about town stealing little things that happen to be lying around loose. And I don't remember having heard him speak the truth since we have been in Nevada. He even tries to prevail upon me to do these things, Ma, but I wasn't brought up in that way, you know. You showed the public what you could do in that line when you raised me, madam. But then you ought to have raised me first, so that Orion could have had the benefit of my example. Do you know that he stole all the stamps out of an 8-stamp quartz mill one night and brought them home under his overcoat and hid them in the back room? Etc. Sam. A little later he had headed for the Esmeralda Hills. Sometime in February, he was established there in a camp with a young man by the name of Horatio Phillips, Rayish. Later he camped with Bob Howland, who, as city marshal of Aurora, became known as the most fearless man in the territory, and still later with Calvin H. Higbee Cal, to whom Roughing It would one day be dedicated. His own funds were exhausted by this time, and Orion, with his rather slender salary, became the financial partner of the firm. It was a comfortless life there in the Esmeralda camp. Snow covered everything. There was nothing to do, and apparently nothing to report, for there are no letters until April. Then the first one is dated Carson City, where he seems to be making a brief sojourn. It is a rather heavy attempt to be lighthearted. Its playfulness suggests that of a dancing bear. To Mrs. Jane Clemens in St. Louis. Carson City, APRA, 1862. My dear mother, yours of March 2nd has just been received. I see I am in for it again with Annie. But she ought to know that I was always stupid. She used to try to teach me lessons from the Bible, but I never could understand them. Doesn't she remember telling me the story of Moses, one Sunday, last spring, and how hard she tried to explain it and simplify it so that I could understand it? But I couldn't, and how she said it was strange that, while her ma and her grandma and her uncle Orion could understand anything in the world, I was so dull that I couldn't understand the Isis thing. And doesn't she remember that finally a light broke in upon me, and I said it was all right, that I knew old Moses himself, and that he kept a clothing store in Market Street? And then she went to her ma and said she didn't know what would become of her Uncle Sam. He was too dull to learn anything. Ever. And I'm just as dull yet. Now I have no doubt her letter was spelled right and was correct in all particulars. But then I had to read it according to my lights. And they being inferior, she ought to overlook the mistakes I make specially, as it is not my fault that I wasn't born with good sense. I am sure she will detect an encouraging ray of intelligence in that last argument. I am waiting here, trying to rent a better office for Orion. I have got the refusal after next week of a room on first floor of a fireproof brick rent, $1,800 a year. Don't know yet whether we can get it or not. If it is not rented before the week is up, we can. I was sorry to hear that Dick was killed. I gave him his first lesson in the musket drill. We had half a dozen muskets in our office when it was over Isbel's music rooms. I hope I am wearing the last white shirt that will embellish my person for many a day, for I do hope that I shall be out of Carson long before this reaches you. Love to all. Very respectfully, Sam. The Annie in this letter was his sister Pamela's little daughter. Long years after, she would be the wife of Charles L. Webster, Mark Twain's publishing partner. Dick, the reader may remember as Dick Hingham of the Keokuk printing office. He was killed in charging the works at Fort Donelson. Clemens was back in Esmeralda when the next letter was written, and we begin now to get pictures of that cheerless mining camp, and to know something of the alternate hopes and discouragements of the hunt for gold. The miner one day soaring on wings of hope, on the next becoming excited, irritable, profane. The names of new mines appear constantly and vanish almost at a touch, suggesting the fairy-like evanescence of their riches. But a few of the letters here will best speak for themselves. Not all of them are needed. It is perhaps unnecessary to say that there is no intentional humor in these documents. To Orion Clemens in Carson City. Esmeralda, 13th April, 1862. My dear brother, Wasson got here night before last from the wars. Tell Lockhart he is not wounded and not killed, is altogether unhurt. He says the whites left their stone fort before he and Lute Noble got there. A large amount of provisions and ammunition, which they left behind them, fell into the hands of the Indians. They had a pitched battle with the savages some 50 miles from the fort, in which Scott, sheriff, and another man was killed. This was the day before the soldiers came up with them. I mean Noble's men, and those under Calls, Evans and Mayfield from Lowe's Angels. Evans assumed the chief command, and next morning the forces were divided into 3 parties and marched against the enemy. Call Mayfield was killed, and Sergeant Gillespie, also Noble's colonel, was wounded. The California troops went back home, and Noble remained to help drive the stock over here. And, as Cousin Sally Dillard says, this is all I know about the fight. Work not yet begun on the H and Darby? Haven't seen it yet. It is still in the snow. Shall begin on it within 3 or 4 weeks, strike the ledge in July. Guess it is good, worth from $30 to $50 a foot in California. Why didn't you send the live Yankee deed, the very one I wanted? Have made no inquiries about it much. Don't intend to until I get the deed. Send it along by mail D, and the express have to pay 3 times for all express matter, once in Carson and twice here. I don't expect to take the saddlebags out of the express office. I paid 25 CTS for the express deeds. Man named Gebhardt shot here yesterday while trying to defend a claim on Last Chance Hill. Expect he will die. These mills here are not worth a D, and except Clayton's, and it is not in full working trim yet. Send me $40 or $50 by mail immediately. The Red Bird is probably good, can't work on the tunnel on account of snow. The pug I have thrown away shan't relocate it, It is nothing but bedrock croppings, too much work to find the ledge if there is one. Shan't record the Farnham until I know more about it, perhaps not at all. Governor under the snow. Douglas and Redbird are both recorded. I have had opportunities to get into several ledges, but refused all but 3, expect to back out of 2 of them. Stir yourself as much as possible, and lay up $100 or $15,000 subject to my call. I go to work tomorrow with pick and shovel. Something's got to come by G before I let go here. Carl Young says you must rent Kinkead's room by all means. Government would rather pay $150 a month for your office than $75 for Jen North's. Says you're playing your hand very badly, for either the government's good opinion or anybody's else, in keeping your office in a shanty. Says put Gov. Nye in your place and he would have a stylish office and no objections would ever be made either. When old Carl Youngs talks this way, I think it time to get a fine office. I wish you would take that office and fit it up handsomely so that I can omit telling people that by this time you are handsomely located, when I know it is no such thing. I am living with Ratio Phillips. Send him one of those black portfolios, by the stage, and put a couple of pen holders and a dozen steel pens in it. If you should have occasion to dispose of the long desk before I return, don't forget to break open the middle drawer and take out my things. Envelop my black cloth coat in a newspaper and hang it in the back room. Don't buy anything while I am here, but save up some money for me. Don't send any money home. I shall have your next quarter's salary spent before you get it, I think. I mean to make or break here within the next 2 or 3 months. Yours, Sam. The wars, mentioned in the opening paragraph of this letter, were incident to the trouble concerning the boundary line between California and Nevada. The trouble continued for some time, with occasional bloodshed. The next letter is an exultant one. There were few enough of this sort. We cannot pretend to keep track of the multiplicity of mines and shares which lure the gold hunters, pecking away at the flinty ledges, usually in the snow. It has been necessary to abbreviate this letter, for much of it has lost all importance with the years, and is merely confusing. Hope is still high in the writer's heart, and confidence in his associates still unshaken. Later he was to lose faith in Rayish, whether with justice or not we cannot know now. To Orion Clowns in Carson City. Esmeralda, May 11, 1862. My dear bro, to use a French expression, I have got my dissatisfy at last. 2 years' time will make us capitalists in spite of anything. Therefore, we need fret and fume, and worry and doubt no more, but just lie still and put up with privations for 6 months. Perhaps 3 months will let us out. Then, if government refuses to pay the rent on your new office, we can do it ourselves. We have got to wait 6 weeks, anyhow, for a dividend, maybe longer. But that it will come there is no shadow of a doubt. I have got the thing sifted down to a dead moral certainty. I own 1/8 of the new Monitor Ledge, Clemens Company, and money can't buy a foot of it, because I know it to contain our fortune. The ledge is 6 feet wide, and one needs no glass to see gold and silver in it. Phillips and I own 1/2 of a segregated claim in the Flyaway Discovery, and good interests in 2 extensions on it. We put men to work on our part of the discovery yesterday, and last night they brought us some fine specimens. Rock taken from 10 feet below the surface on the other part of the discovery has yielded $150 to the ton in the mill, and we are at work 300 feet from their shaft. May 12, yours by the mail received last night. 1,800 feet in the C.T. Rice's company? Well, I am glad you did not accept of the 200 feet. Tell Rice to give it to some poor man. But hereafter, when anybody holds up a glittering prospect before you, just argue in this wise, viz. That, if all spare change be devoted to working the Monitor and Flyaway, 12 months or 24 at furthest, we'll find all our earthly wishes satisfied, so far as money is concerned. And the more feet we have, the more anxiety. We must bear, therefore, why not say no and your prospects? I wait on a sure thing, and a man is less than a man if he can't wait 2 years for a fortune. When you and I came out here, we did not expect 63 or 64 to find us rich men, and if that proposition had been made, we would have accepted it gladly. Now it is made. Well, I am willing now that Neary's tunnel or anybody else's tunnel shall succeed. Some of them may beat us a few months, but we shall be on hand in the fullness of time, as sure as fate. I would hate to swap chances with any member of the tribe. In fact, I am so lost to all sense and reason as to be capable of refusing to trade Flyaway, with but 200 feet in the company of 4, Foot for that splendid Lady Washington, with its lists of capitalist proprietors, and its 35,000 feet of priceless ground. I wouldn't mind being in some of those Clear Creek claims if I lived in Carson and we could spare the money. But I have struck my tent in Esmeralda, and I care for no mines but those which I can superintend myself. I am a citizen here now, and I am satisfied, although R and I are strapped and we haven't 3 days' rations in the house. Rayish is looking anxiously for money, and so am I. Send me whatever you can spare conveniently. I want it to work the flyaway with. My fourth of that claim only cost me $50, which isn't paid yet though, and I suppose I could sell it here in town for 10 times that amount today, but I shall probably hold on to it till the cows come home. I shall work the monitor. And the other claims with my own hands. I prospected of a pound of 1,000 yesterday, and Rayish reduced it with the blowpipe, and got about 10 or 12 cents in gold and silver, besides the other half of it which we spilt on the floor and didn't get. The specimen came from the croppings, but was a choice one, and showed much free gold to the naked eye. Well, I like the corner upstairs office amazingly, provided it has one fine, large front room superbly carpeted, for the safe and a $150 desk, or such a matter. One handsome room amidships, less handsomely gotten up perhaps for records and consultations, and one good-sized bedroom, and adjoining it a kitchen, neither of which latter can be entered by anybody but yourself, and finally, when one of the ledges begins to pay, the whole to be kept in parlor order by two likely contrabands at big wages, the same to be free of expense to the government. You want the entire second story, no less room than you would have had in Harris and Co.'s. Make them fix for you before the 1st of July, for maybe you might want to come out strong on the 4th, you know. No, the post office is all right and kept by a gentleman, but WF Express isn't. They charge 25 CTS to express a letter from here, but I believe they have quit charging twice for letters that arrive prepaid. The flyaway specimen I sent you, taken by myself from Decay's shaft, 300 feet from where we are going to sink, cannot be called choice. Exactly, say something above medium, to be on the safe side. But I have seen exceedingly choice chunks from that shaft. My intention at first in sending the antelope specimen was that you might see that it resembles the monitor. But come to think, a man can tell absolutely nothing about that without seeing both ledges themselves. I tried to break a handsome chunk from a huge piece of my darling monitor which we brought from the croppings yesterday, but it all splintered up, and I send you the scraps. I call that choice? Any D fool would. Don't ask if it has been assayed, for it hasn't. It don't need it. It is amply able to speak for itself. It is 6 feet wide on top, and traversed through and through with veins whose color proclaims their worth. What the devil does a man want with any more feet when he owns in the flyaway and the invincible bomb-proof monitor? If I had anything more to say, I have forgotten what it was, unless, perhaps, that I want a sum of money, anywhere from $20 to $150 as soon as possible. Radish sends regards. He or I, one will drop a line to the age. Occasionally, I suppose you saw my letters in the Enterprise. Bro, Sam. P.S. I suppose Pamela never will regain her health, but she could improve it by coming to California, provided the trip didn't kill her. You see, Bixby is on the flagship. He always was the best pilot on the Mississippi, and deserves his posish. They have done a reckless thing, though, in putting Sam Bowen on the Swan, for if a bombshell happens to come his way, he will infallibly jump overboard. Send me another package of those envelopes, per Bagley's coat pocket. We see how anxious he was for his brother to make a good official showing. If a niggardly government refused to provide decent quarters, no matter. The miners, with gold pouring in, would themselves pay for a suite, superbly carpeted, and all kept in order by two likely contrabands. That is to say, Negroes. Samuel Clemens in those days believed in expansion and impressive surroundings. His brother, though also mining mad, was rather inclined to be penny-wise in the matter of office luxury. Not a bad idea, as it turned out. Orion, by the way, was acquiring feet on his own account, and in one instance, at least, seems to have won his brother's commendation. The Enterprise letters mentioned we shall presently hear of again. To Orion Clemens, in Carson City. Esmeralda, Sunday, May, 1862. My dear brother, well, if you haven't struck it rich. That is, if the piece of rock you sent me came from a bona fide ledge, and it looks as if it did. If that is a ledge and you own 200 feet in it, why, it's a big thing. and I have nothing more to say. If you have actually made something by helping to pay somebody's prospecting expenses, it is a wonder of the first magnitude and deserves to rank as such. If that rock came from a well-defined ledge, that particular vein must be at least an inch wide, judging from this specimen, which is fully that thick. When I came in the other evening, hungry and tired and ill-natured, and threw down my pick and shovel, Rayish gave me your specimen, said Bagley brought it, and asked me if it were cinnabar. I examined it by the waning daylight and took the specks of fine gold for sulphurates. Wrote you I did not think much of it, and posted the letter immediately. But as soon as I looked at it in the broad light of day, I saw my mistake. During the week, we have made 3 horns, got a blowpipe, and yesterday, all prepared, we prospected the mountain house. I broke the specimen in 2 and found it full of fine gold inside. Then we washed out 1/4 of it and got a noble prospect. This we reduced with the blowpipe and got about 2 cents, herewith enclosed, in pure gold. As the fragment prospected weighed rather less than an ounce, this would give about $500 to the ton. We were eminently well satisfied. Therefore, hold on to the mountain house, for it is a big thing. Touch it lightly as far as money is concerned, though, for it is well to reserve the code of justice in the matter of quartz ledges, that is, consider them all and their owners guilty of shenanigan until they are proved innocent. P.S. Monday, Ratio and I have bought 1/2 of a segregated claim in the original flyaway, for $100.50 down. We haven't a cent in the house. We too will work the ledge and have full control and pay all expenses. If you can spare $100 conveniently, let me have it, or $50 anyhow, considering that I own 1/4 of this. It is of course more valuable than 1/17 of the mountain house, although not so rich. There is too much of a sameness in the letters of this period to use all of them. There are always new claims, and work done, apparently without system or continuance, hoping to uncover sudden boundless affluence. In the next letter, and the one following it, we get a hint of an episode, or rather of 2 incidents which he combined into an episode in Roughing It. The story as told in that book is an account of what might have happened, rather than history. There was never really any money in the blind lead of the Wide West claim, except that which was sunk in it by unfortunate investors. Only extracts from these letters are given. The other portions are irrelevant and of slight value. Extract from a letter to Orion Clemens, in Carson City. I got in with them and again demanded possession. They said I might stay in it as long as I pleased and work, but they would do the same. I asked one of our company to take my place in the hole, while I went to consult a lawyer. He did so. The lawyer said it was no go. They must offer some force. Our boys will try to be there first in the morning, in which case they may get possession and keep it. Now you understand the shooting scrape in which Gebhardt was killed the other day. The Clemens Company, all of us, hate to resort to arms in this matter, and it will not be done until it becomes a forced hand, but I think that will be the end of it nevertheless. The mine relocated in this letter was not the Wide West, but it furnished the proper incident. The only mention of the Wide West is found in a letter written in July. Extract from a letter to Orion Clemens in Carson City, 1862. If I do not forget it, I will send you, per next mail, a pinch of decomposed rock, which I pinched with thumb and finger from Wide West. Ledge a while ago, Rayish and I have secure out of a 400 FT. In it, which perhaps, the ledge, I mean, is a spur from the WW, our shaft is about 100 FT. From the WW shaft, in order to get in, we agreed to sink 30 FT. We have sublet to another man for 50 FT, and we pay for powder and sharpening tools. The Wide West claim was forfeited, but there is no evidence to show that Clemens and his partners were ever, except in fiction, millionaires for 10 days. The background, the local color, and the possibilities are all real enough, but Mark Twain's aim in this, as in most of his other reminiscent writing, was to arrange and adapt his facts to the needs of a good story. The letters of this summer, 1862, most of them bear evidence of waning confidence in mining as a source of fortune. The miner has now little faith in his own judgment, and none at all in that of his brother, who was without practical experience. Letter to Orion Clemens, in Carson City. Esmeralda, Thursday. My dear bro, yours of the 17th per express just received. Part of it pleased me exceedingly, and part of it didn't. Concerning the letter, for instance, you have promised me that you would leave all mining matters and everything involving an outlay of money in my hands. Sending a man fooling around the country after ledges, for God's sake. When there are hundreds of feet of them under my nose here, begging for owners, free of charge. I don't want any more feet, and I won't touch another foot. So you see, Orion, as far as any ledges of Perry's are concerned, or any other except what I examine first with my own eyes, I freely yield my right to share ownership with you. The balance of your letter, I say, pleases me exceedingly, especially that about the H&D being worth from $30 to $50 in Cal. It pleases me because, if the ledges prove to be worthless, it will be a pleasant reflection to know that others were beaten worse than ourselves. Rayish sold a man 30 feet yesterday at $20 a foot, although I was present at the sale, and told the man the ground wasn't worth a D. N. He said he had been hankering after a few feet in the H&D for a long time, and he had got them at last, and he couldn't help thinking he had secured a good thing. We went and looked at the ledges, and both of them acknowledged that there was nothing in them but good indications. Yet the owners in the H&D will part with anything else sooner than with feet in these ledges. Well, the work goes slowly, very slowly on in the tunnel, and we'll strike it some day. But if we strike it rich, I've lost my guess, that's all. I expect that the way it got so high in Cal was that Rayish's brother over there was offered $750 for 20 feet of it, and he refused. Couldn't go on the hill today, it snowed. It always snows here, I expect. Don't you suppose they have pretty much quit writing at home? When you receive your next one for salary, don't send any of it here until after you have told me you have got it. Remember this. I am afraid of that H&D. They have struck the ledge in the live Yankee tunnel, and I told the president, Mr. Allen, that it wasn't as good as the croppings. He said that was true enough, but they would hang to it until it did prove rich. He is much of a gentleman, that man Allen. And ask Gaslery why the devil he don't send along my commission as deputy sheriff. The fact of my being in California and out of his country wouldn't amount to a D.N. with me in the performance of my official duties. I have nothing to report at present, except that I shall find out all I want to know about this locality before I leave it. How do the records pay? Third bro. Sam. In one of the foregoing letters, the one dated May 11, there is a reference to the writer's Enterprise letters. Sometimes, during idle days in the camp, the miner had followed old literary impulses and written an occasional burlesque sketch, which he had signed Josh, and sent to the Territorial Enterprise at Virginia City. One contribution was sent to a Keokuk paper, the Gate City, and a letter written by Mrs. Jane Clemens at the time would indicate that Mark Twain's mother did not always approve of her son's literary efforts. She hopes that he will do better, and sometime write something that his kin will be proud of. The rough, vigorous humor of these had attracted some attention, and Orion, pleased with any measure of success that might come to his brother, had allowed the authorship of them to become known. When, in July, the financial situation became desperate, the Esmeralda miner was moved to turn to literature for relief. But we will let him present the situation himself. To Orion Clemens, in Carson City. Esmeralda, July 23d, 1862. My dear bro, no, I don't own a foot in the Johnson ledge. I will tell the story some day in a more intelligible manner than Tom has told it. You needn't take the trouble to deny Tom's version, though. I own 25 feet, 116 of the first East X on it, and Johnson himself has contracted to find the ledge for 100 feet. Contract signed yesterday. But as the ledge will be difficult to find, he is allowed 6 months to find it in. An 18th of the Ophir was a fortune to John D. Winters, and the Ophir can't beat the Johnson any. My debts are greater than I thought for. I bought $25 worth of clothing and sent $25 to Higby in the cement diggings. I owe about $45 or $50 and have got about $45 in my pocket. But how in the H.L. I am going to live on something over $100 until October or November is singular. The fact is, I must have something to do, and that shortly too. Now write to the Sacramento Union folks or to Marsh, and tell them I'll write as many letters a week as they want, for $10 a week. My board must be paid. Tell them I have corresponded with the N. Orleans Crescent and other papers, and the Enterprise. California is full of people who have interests here, and it's seldom they hear from this country. I can't write a specimen letter. Now, at any rate, I'd rather undertake to write a Greek poem. Tell 'em the mail and express leave 3 times a week, and it costs fro to 50 cents to send letters by the blasted express. If they want letters from here, Who'll run from morning till night collecting materials cheaper. I'll write a short letter twice a week, for the present, for the age, for $5 per week. Now it has been a long time since I couldn't make my own living, and it shall be a long time before I loaf another year. If I get the other 25 feet in the Johnson X, I shan't care a d.n. I'll be willing to curse a while and wait. And if I can't move the bowels of those hills this fall, I will come up and clerk for you until I get money enough to go over the mountains for the winter. Third bro. Sam. The territorial enterprise at Virginia City was at this time owned by Joseph T. Goodman, who had bought it on the eve of the great Comstock silver mining boom, and from a struggling, starving sheet had converted it into one of the most important, certainly the most picturesque papers on the coast. The sketches which the Esmeralda miner had written over the name of Josh fitted into it exactly, and when a young man named Barstow, in the business office, urged Goodman to invite Josh to join their staff, the enterprise owner readily fell in with the idea. Among a lot of mining matters of no special interest, Clemens, July 30th, wrote his brother. Barstow has offered me the post as local reporter for the enterprise at $25 a week, and I have written him that I will let him know next mail if possible. In Roughing It, we are told that the miner eagerly accepted the proposition to come to Virginia City, but the letters tell a different story. Mark Twain was never one to abandon any undertaking easily. His unwillingness to surrender in a lost cause would cost him more than one fortune in the years to come. A week following the date of the foregoing, he was still undecided. To Orion Clemens, in Carson City. Esmeralda, Aug. 7, 1862. My dear bro, Barstow wrote that if I wanted the place I could have it. I wrote him that I guessed I would take it, and asked him how long before I must come up there. I have not heard from him since. Now, I shall leave at midnight tonight, alone and on foot for a walk of 60 or 70 miles through a totally uninhabited country, and it is barely possible that mail facilities may prove infernally slow during the few weeks I expect to spend out there. But do you write Barstow that I have left here for a week or so, and in case he should want me, he must write me here, or let me know through you. The contractors say they will strike the Fresno next week. After fooling with those assiers a week, they concluded not to buy Mr. Flower at $50, although they would have given 5 times the sum for it 4 months ago. So I have made out a deed for one half of all Johnny's ground and acknowledged and left in Judge F.K. Bechtel's hands, and if Judge Turner wants it, he must write to Bechtel and pay him his notary fee of $1. $50. I would have paid that fee myself, but I want money now as I leave town tonight. However, if you think it isn't right, you can pay the fee to Judge Turner yourself. Hang to your money now, I may want some when I get back. See that you keep out of debt to anybody. Bully for B, write him that I would write him myself, but I am to take a walk tonight and haven't time. Tell him to bring his family out with him. He can rely upon what I say, and I say the land has lost its ancient desolate appearance. The rose and the oleander have taken the place of the departed sagebush. A rich black loam, garnished with moss and flowers and the greenest of grass, smiles to heaven from the vanished sand plains, the endless snows have all disappeared, and in their stead, or to repay us for their loss, the mountains rear their billowy heads aloft, crowned with a fadeless and eternal verdure, birds and fountains and trees tropical bees, everywhere. And the poet dreamt of Nevada when he wrote. And Sharon waves, in solemn praise, her silent groves of palm. And today the royal raven listens in a dreamy stupor to the songs of the thrush and the nightingale and the canary, and shudders when the gaudy plumaged birds of the distant south sweep by him to the orange groves of Carson. Tell him he wouldn't recognize the D country. He should bring his family by all means. I intended to write home, but I haven't done it. Third bro. Sam. In this letter, we realize that he had gone into the wilderness to reflect, to get a perspective on the situation. He was a great walker in those days, and sometimes with Higby, sometimes alone, made long excursions. One such is recorded in Roughing It, the trip to Mono Lake. We have no means of knowing where his 70-mile tour led him now, but it is clear that he still had not reached a decision on his return. Indeed, we gather that he is inclined to keep up the battle among the barren Esmeralda Hills. Last mining letter, written to Mrs. Moffett in St. Louis. Esmeralda, Cal, Aug. 15, 1862. My dear sister, I mailed a letter to you and Ma this morning, but since then I have received yours to Orion and me. Therefore, I must answer right away, else I may leave town without doing it at all. What in thunder are pilots' wages to me? Which question, I beg humbly to observe, is of a general nature, and not discharged particularly at you. But it is singular, isn't it, that such a matter should interest Orion, when it is of no earthly consequence to me? I never have once thought of returning home to go on the river again, and I never expect to do any more piloting at any price. My livelihood must be made in this country, and if I have to wait longer than I expected, let it be so. I have no fear of failure. You know I have extravagant hopes, for Orion tells you everything which he ought to keep to himself, but it's his nature to do that sort of thing, and I let him alone. I did think for a while of going home this fall, but when I found that that was, and had been the cherished intention, and the darling aspiration every year, of these old careworn Californians for 12 weary years, I felt a little uncomfortable, but I stole a march on disappointment and said I would not go home this fall. I will spend the winter in San Francisco, if possible. Do not tell anyone that I had any idea of piloting again at present, for it is all a mistake. This country suits me, and it shall suit me, whether or number. Dan Twing and I and Dan's dog cabin together, and will continue to do so for a while, until I leave for. The mansion is 10x12 with a domestic roof. Yesterday it rained, the first shower for 5 months. Domestic, it appears to me, is not waterproof. We went outside to keep from getting wet. Dan makes the bed when it is his turn to do it, and when it is my turn, I don't. The dog is not a good hunter, and he isn't worth shucks to watch, but he scratches up the dirt floor of the cabin, and catches flies, and makes himself generally useful in the way of washing dishes. Dan gets up first in the morning and makes a fire, and I get up last and sit by it while he cooks breakfast. We have a cold lunch at noon, and I cook supper, very much against my will. However, one must have one good meal a day, and if I were to live on Dan's abominable cookery, I should lose my appetite. Dan attended Dr. Chorpening's funeral yesterday, and he felt as though he ought to wear a white shirt, and we had a jolly good time finding such an article. We turned over all our traps, and he found one at last, but I shall always think it was suffering from yellow fever. He also found an old black coat, greasy, and wrinkled to that degree that it appeared to have been quilted at some time or other. In this gorgeous costume he attended the funeral, and when he returned, his own dog drove him away from the cabin, not recognizing him. This is true. You would not like to live in a country where flour was $40 a barrel? Very well, then, I suppose you would not like to live here, where flour was $100 a barrel when I first came here, and shortly afterwards it couldn't be had at any price, and for 1 month the people lived on barley, beans, and beef, and nothing beside. Oh no, we didn't luxuriate then, perhaps not, but we said wise and severe things about the vanity and wickedness of high living. We preached our doctrine and practiced it, which course I respectfully recommend to the clergymen of St. Louis. Where is Beak Jolly and Bixby? Your brother Sam,